Let's do it Joe Rogan style. 3, 2,
Oh.
1, and we're live. Everyone, welcome to the first ever Bob podcast. The carpet is very mobile here, and also my chair is on a swivel. So that is not really helping us right now. Today's guest is Mateusz Łabinowicz. For you guys who don't know, that's the guy who's in most of my videos. And I chose today's guest not because he was available, although he graciously was available, but also because I think he's one of the most interesting people, at least of my relative age. He's a bit younger. But as Reagan said, I will not let my opponent's, youth and inexperience be a problem in today's interview. So without further ado, this is Mateusz. You guys know him very well, and you're about to meet him a bit more. So right off the bat, I'd like to apologize for the formality of this. I feel like we would never. There's the 3/4 view. It feels like we do have an audience, but I guess we do have an audience, so we do have to keep that in mind.
Well, I guess we just face each other. We don't have to face the camera.
I also have no idea how good this little microphone is at picking us up, so after our entire interview, it might turn out that you guys can't hear us at all. But without further ado, because we've been fiddling with this for too long, let us begin.
I'd like to pride myself in thinking that I'm the only one that would agree to do this.
Really?
Of your friends, yes.
Wow. Well,
Do you think anyone else would want to sit down and talk to you for an hour for 50 subscribers and possibly ruin their future careers by saying something dangerous?
I think a lot of people would
Not agree.
graciously take that honor.
They
Yes.
would.
Yeah.
Really.
I can think of two who have personally asked me to be on the quad somewhere. So I think they
Can we name those people or
Clovis and Timek.
Timek?
Not your Timek, my
Ah.
Timek.
PSX?
The fun guy. No, not PSX,
Oh.
the other guy.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, but being in a video and traveling to some
absolutely. So
Cool
cheers to that. We're
country
finally here.
is a lot different than talking in a
Well, yeah, well,
very
sometimes you
formal
gotta talk
setting.
more. Especially since when we do travel to countries, we don't have a chance to talk.
Well, we do in person.
Well, yeah, but we never do it on camera.
Something
For
that
some reason,
meant
we
to
should,
get
maybe.
private. Maybe we should. I feel like when I watch my videos, I regret filming so much of like what we're doing and where we're going, and not filming enough of like the little things.
Absolutely, I feel the same.
Talking when I cook breakfast or when
Cooking breakfast,
or when you
eating.
cook
Oh my
breakfast.
goodness, that's one that very often.
We very rarely feature food, or at least I do. I very rarely
Something.
put food on.
I just
my-
need like B-roll. I need the human interactions. You know, us
Yeah.
waiting and being frustrated with the bus systems. But like everything just seems scripted when we do it.
Well, I always thought that B-roll should be, like the pyramid or be on a bus somewhere.
But it's so boring.
Because like everyone's already.
Everyone's
seen
seen the pyramid.
it. Exactly. So
No one's
at
seen
the
the
forefront
crowds, no
should be
one's
like
seen-
us, and then like there's the pyramid by the way.
Absolutely. Casey Neistat, who, if you guys don't know, he was like one of the OG YouTubers who would. He was one of the first ones to do like the daily vlog. He actually daily vlogged for over a year, I think, or right around there, like hundreds of vlogs every single day. And he said that you will learn how to film by editing. Whenever I edit, I have like a clip of like this, I don't know, waterfall or something, and the next clip is us eating a meal after the waterfall, and there's no in between.
Yeah.
There's no transition. Like you know, and also I feel like a lot of the stuff that shows your personality, like our little jokes, like our little, I don't know, the conversations that we have in between, the fun things we do. I don't know, picking up a stick and playing with it, whatever the hell. It lacks the soul. Everything seems scripted.
It does. Yeah, but I don't know. I also get kind
It comes out. It doesn't like come out that way once we do post the video. But for
When I
some
watch it,
reason-
I don't like it. I don't like. I kind of get mad at myself for not filming more. But then when I am filming, I get tired of it. Like Guatemala, I didn't film anything because I was like, I can't be bothered anymore. And I just kind of took a break, I guess, from it.
Do you feel like sometimes filming, the chair is rubbing against the table, sorry, but do you ever feel like filming interrupts what you're doing while you're traveling?
I don't know.
Because I felt that a little bit. for your example in Sushi Talta, I didn't film almost anything
Yeah.
because you were filming, and I just wanted to live in the moment. There's a few times where I was like, this would be cool filmed, but I'll just appreciate it right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's that's how I felt in Guatemala, and that's kind of how I feel like this is like a parallel to going to a concert, right? Going to a concert, and there's always people filming everything. And I've been to a couple concerts where I try to get like all the top songs and record them, and then
But no one gives a shit.
well, whenever I listen to them like back at home, they sound like shit because a phone can't pick up like that kind of
The
crazy
vibe, yeah.
quality at a concert.
Yeah, and
right?
also like if anyone.
And I'd rather just sit there and actually like listen and live through it and enjoy it versus
Yeah, I did that a few times too. I'm
like
definitely
pictures,
guilty of
pictures
that
are
too.
good.
But I also feel like that's a bit of my ego. I just want to like tell everyone how cool I am for being at this concert. Because if they want to listen to the songs, you can just Google them and have
Yeah.
like the professional recording of it, as opposed to just.
Instagram is a very
My
dangerous
hands.
path into narcissism, I think.
Exactly. I want to follow down that path a bit more though.
I
feel
think you
like
should
there is-
because
There is a happy balance which I have not reached yet.
Instagram
Far
is,
from obsessed.
Instagram has become like the ultimate sort of business card. You know, if you want to present yourself to someone, then usually the first thing they're going to look up is your Instagram. You know, maybe Facebook a little bit, but really no one uses LinkedIn anymore. Like that used to be the professional sort of pathway.
That's
Now,
very interesting that you say that.
if like I want to see how you present yourself to people you don't know, to strangers, I would look at your Instagram and see the kind of photos you post.
That's true. I think that Instagram kind of dominated all of the social medias.
Yeah, like for
At
like
this point, it becomes
in
your
your
business
case,
card.
if you want to go down that acting path, and I don't know, a couple of years later or even a couple of months, I'm some sort of like caster, and I see your Instagram, there's nothing on there, and I see somebody else who has like a fantastic catalog of their work, right? It's that guy has like a one up on you, I think.
That's interesting. Although I think that I often think about the relationship between showing yourself online, like releasing content, and being an actor, because there is a level of mysteriousness that you have to maintain. I think.
Yeah. I mean,
For
there's a lot of
example-
actors that don't have social media, right?
Exactly.
But they're
exactly
already
for that
like,
reason.
But they're established.
Because if you but the thing is, if you present too much of yourself, I feel like you like saturate the market with your content, and people will start recognizing you as like a content creator. And
Well, then that's why you should, I think, diversify your sort of portfolio, right? Like,
I don't think who's a creator who has a very active like, who's also a YouTuber, for example.
a creator who's a YouTuber.
No, not a creator, a actor who is also a YouTuber, like does both.
I actually probably can't think of one. I don't know. Cesare Pazura.
Cesare Pazura is retired now, I think.
Oh
from
yeah, he doesn't.
acting. Well, actually,
He might pick up.
I don't know.
movies once in a while.
He's so like known in the field that he'll always get gigs
Yeah.
that he's known for. You know, if they need that very specific comedic actor, or if they need a voice actor who for like a funny role, he already has such a long like resume that it just that speaks for him. But also his channel is all about him being an actor.
Right, but
It's really like him reviewing his movies.
he's already at the
and
step where he doesn't need to promote himself, right? Versus you, I think you
obviously,
should promote yourself, right? So I think you should dive into that sort of
definitely
that
on
sort of
Instagram.
feeling that everybody needs to know what you're up to. Not all the time, right? But like if you're going somewhere doing something cool, or like here's me, I'm drinking a beer, like I'm gonna show off to my friends. Right? Like there's so many cool things you're doing. This is your almost third year living in Poland, and I think first of all you've taken like no pictures of this.
Yeah, if you look through my camera roll, I have like 50 pictures in all of 2024, and half of them are of my like electricity meter or something like that.
Yeah, and I think
Or like a broom.
like because you didn't have a job or didn't like go to school, I think you did a lot of very, very exciting and cool things that people would be interested in seeing, because the average person, your average friend living in Edmonton, just goes to school and goes to work, and you know, like
Yeah, I mean,
you're
a
like
lot of side quests have passed me without ever being recorded.
yeah, like if I was to ask you what have you done in the last 3 years, you would probably think nothing, right? But
Well, it's hard to narrow down to like one thing. People always ask you either your job or your studies. Those are the
Yeah.
two things that they'll ever ask you, really. And I don't know. I just feel like it's so boring. That's why when I talk to people, I always say like, "What's something cool about you that you'd like to do?"
but you also
Sure.
can't.
The what? I can't. Oh, I can't. I don't. I can't.
sort of answer those two questions.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
we were
that's
studying
definitely.
but-
Not to roast me in front of everyone, but yeah, absolutely. It does come to show. But also, a lot of people are. I feel like because people expect that question, they put on this fake excitement about what they're doing. I feel like so many people, if you ask them about other things and then school comes up, you'll find out that they actually don't know what they're doing, or they're just they're studying some general field with no idea of how they want to do it. I've actually met a few people who are like
Usually business is the case. And
business
someone just-
or any like if they're in
Business is-
the arts.
Yeah, yeah. Business is like it's like it's the degree you do if you don't know what you're doing most of the time, right?
A little bit, yeah. A little
Business
bit,
can-
but even
people. I mean, people that use business as a pathway for like further degrees or whatever, then totally fine, right? And
yeah.
like, if you want to be an investment banker or something, I'm like, what else are you gonna study?
Yeah, I know. I've met so many people who are studying psychology right now, who have said that, and I asked them like, "Do you want to be a psychologist? Like, do you want to, like, what exactly do you plan on doing with this degree?" And they either tell me they don't know, or they tell me this elaborate path of how they're going to transition from this to politics or
I
some
also,
other crap
I know a couple
that's
people.
unrelated.
A couple people that are doing psychology, and I find that I know more about that field than they do. Like
Mhm.
for example, well, psychology is a very like it's a highly saturated field, right? Like there's so many psychologists, and if you want to be someone, you have to get a PhD in psychology, right? And
In
like,
Canada, yes, I think.
yeah,
if
yeah.
you
And
want to
even
be
looking at like the Jordan Peterson
a clinical
sort of
psychologist.
scenario, well, like try to say something as a psychologist now. Like,
Okay,
it's-
but there's
there's a very pretty like very serious discipline that's sort of enforced by these governing bodies of psychologists, and like I don't even know how you would go about establishing yourself in psychology. Like it's hard.
well,
Like to be renowned. I don't know. Like can you go and open up a practice as like a brand new psychologist and expect people to come in and pay you to talk to you for hours?
I don't know. I think
Seems
that
hard.
if you crave that kind of connection with people who are lost and you just want to help them in some way, there's definitely
Yeah, yeah.
all sorts of counseling, all sorts of stuff that you
Sure.
can do to get established. But it's also very hard to compare because I mean psychology is one of those fields that can absorb you completely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like Peterson especially is like very passionate about this. Like he does this for fun.
But what I'm getting at with
And-
people studying psychology is they think that they'll finish their degree and then suddenly I'm a psychologist.
Suddenly I'm Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, well, no, you finished a Bachelor of Arts, which is
Yeah.
the same as someone who did like artistic dance.
Yeah, well, he was a professor at Harvard, so it's hard to compare yourself there.
But
But-
he has a doctorate, right? So
That was something that went through my mind. That's why I went into arts
to be a
the first time.
psychologist.
To be a psychologist. I went to psychology, except it was like introductory level stuff, but it was all online, and I realized how different it was from what I had envisioned, because I envisioned just like the gimmicky, like I will be this godfather figure who will be able to solve everyone's problems and tell them what to do.
Adash went into engineering because he thought he would be designing and building planes, right? And then he learned that you actually just design like a tiny little particle part that goes into a plane, right? And
Like the whole
No, he
tip of the
doesn't.
propeller and all
went
of a
to
sudden.
Alvin, but
Yeah.
that's not what he wanted, right?
It's
And
very-
that's a lot of people too. Like even I going into my degree, I thought it would be something completely different than what it really is.
Really?
Because I don't think I've learned anything that I can like practically apply to a professional career at school. Most of the stuff I know or have learned happened outside.
Yeah, well, that is something that has always puzzled me a little bit. Like, passion and your degree or your job. You know, like how passionate are people really about their jobs? And I think that
that's a very
seeking that kind of passion has really, well, paralyzed me in my decision making in that regard. because I'd start doing something and I'm like, this is like boring. This is not like I'm not driven to do this, and maybe it's not for me, and I just like quit it altogether. And I feel like a lot of creative people have that problem where everything seems like a great idea, so you can't pursue anything, you can't stick to anything, and I. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the ratio should be. How driven you should be to do your job in order to deem it worthy of committing so much time to. You know?
I don't know. It's hard because I think for different people there's different things. Like there's a lot of people who are motivated by money, right? And what they do for a living doesn't really matter as long as they have a lot of money to spend and can buy fancy things and
Probably.
and get cars and retire young and then, you know, piss off to some island and live
Probably,
like
I
a
don't
king,
know.
right?
Maybe it's
But
because I never experienced poverty in my life. I was always very fortunate in that regard, but I guess for that reason, I was never able to drive myself with the thought of
I
money.
don't think poverty is real. I know people who come from very wealthy families and are driven like
Continue the wealth.
purely by money. Not even continue, but just get as much as they can. Like I know a guy who is going into a job which pays very, very well, right? But they work you like a dog. Like the hours you put in are ridiculous, and he knows that. He knows he's not going to get like any sleep for 3 years.
What's the job?
It's investment banking.
Investment banking.
You put in hour like he's like, if I can get home at 2 a.m. then that's like good. And I'm like,
See, but
like it's nuts.
the question that arises from that is, do you even like that? And how do you even answer that question? You know?
Yeah.
Do I like it or do I like the money? Or like, does it matter to me if I like it?
Do I like that? I think if people like that, if they could find different things that could pay just as good, and you know they could put in a lot less work and actually do something enjoyable, they would obviously choose that direction.
It's like the Andrew Tate thing. It's like looking for passion is the dumbest thing. Do you think the concrete, like the guy who owns the concrete plant in China, do you think he's passionate about concrete?
Yeah.
No, he's not. It's the way he makes money. It's just you're trying to make ends meet, and all of a sudden you have more money, and then money is your driving factor. I don't know.
Yeah, your job doesn't have to be a passion. Maybe it's better if it isn't. Maybe it's better if you do your passionate things outside of work, and work kind of provides for you to be able to like indulge in those passions. Right? Like
I don't know.
realistically, for you, the most important thing in your life would probably be how you run your house or your home, right? Your family life. I would assume.
It's hard to say. It's so hard to say if you don't have it.
You don't have it, but I think it's. Well, you talk about it a lot, right?
Well, obviously, if
It's
I
important for you.
if I was old and I had little money but had a family beside me which loved me and cared for me, I think I'd be much more satisfied with how my life turned out than if I was just like a Scrooge, or even if I had a moderately happy family. You know.
But I think it would be
Like-
understandable for you to take a job that you hate that pays well, so that you can have that, you know, very happy family that you can provide for and never have to worry about money, right?
Okay, I guess we're quitting acting today.
We're quitting acting? Why would you quit acting?
right away? Because it's the ratio of getting paid versus. I mean, you have to get to the top of the field there.
Yeah, but you haven't
to
even
make-
started. So like, haven't you?
I know, but it definitely isn't a quick way to make money.
It isn't a quick. Well, it isn't a quick way, but I think you have a talent that you're going to waste if you don't go into this like fully.
Okay,
I don't
but
think
that
you fully-
also that contradicts what we just said about the concrete worker now.
It does, but maybe the concrete worker didn't have a talent in acting.
Okay, well let's ask
And-
about you. You're in political sciences right now, right?
Yeah.
And you have 2 more years until your degree's over.
A
And
little
you
bit less,
have
but yeah.
said that you've learned nothing in this field. It's
Yeah.
the biggest
That's
asset that you've gained from it is to say that you're studying this, because then people listen to you.
Well, yeah. When I
And
say
wanna help you.
when I say I've learned nothing, it's a overgeneralization, because I've learned.
Discipline and the ability to write bullshit that you don't.
Yeah,
Want to.
I don't know if I learned that, because I kind of did the same in high school as well, right? Like sit down and write this, you have a choice, right? I've learned like random theories that like I can tell you what post-colonial feminism is or postmodern feminism is. I can actually know quite a bit about feminism, right? But like, what am I gonna do with that? You know,
Good transition into it, feminism.
that would be a good transition into feminism. But I think, for me at least, university, because I'm doing an arts degree and because it's a very like broad and open-ended degree, which doesn't really guarantee you a job at the end. School has been sort of a gateway into the professional sort of aspect of politics, right? Like it's opened doors for me that would otherwise be closed if I wasn't in school. Because going to all these like events and different like I don't know meetings and conferences, like if you're asked what are you studying and you say nothing, it's like what are you doing here? You know, like it's harsh. It's quite
On
rough.
one hand, but if you could say that,
Yeah.
and you could still be able to, I guess, charm these people in some way that they do give you the time of day. Do you think you'd be better off to do what, like, for example, you said Bosak did, and not complete any degree but commit in politics?
Bosak started a political movement that he, you know, built from essentially nothing. Like, well, before that he was involved in numerous organizations and different political parties, but after he like became established, he started his own thing, right? So, Bosak was, I think because he was associated with this movement, like he didn't really need to have a educated background or whatever, right? Like him starting this movement and making it successful was all he needed, right? Like, that was his sort of.
It's interesting because if I look at what you've done and the people you have met, I'd say that you are like on top of your game when it comes to pursuing that goal of becoming a politician.
And I think without going to school and getting this piece of paper, it would be a lot harder, if not impossible. Maybe not impossible, but it would be hard. It would be definitely hard.
Can you see the path in front of you? Because I feel this is something that dawned on me recently, is that I can very clearly see like a dream version of myself, like an ideal, and then I can very clearly see me in a day, 2 days, week, you know, just the closest version of me that there is to now. But in between, like the 1 year, 2 year in the future, for some reason, I never like daydream about that. I never, or maybe 2 years closer too, but like even months ahead. It's hard for me to bridge the gap between right now and those like final dreams. Are you able to do that with politics?
I think for me, it's like it's hazy in the middle. I know what I want to do next year and in 2 years, right? When I finish my degree, and well, I guess I have a year and a half left. I know what I want to do after, like in the immediate effect. But then it's kind of like blurry, right? Like I know I want to move to Poland, and then it kind of just like cuts off.
Cuts off?
Yeah.
Would you want to live in Krakow? That, for those who don't know, that's where Mateusz is from. I guess his mom.
I think it would be very hard to make that work at the beginning.
So you think that
because
push comes to shove, you'll just end up in Warsaw?
Well, it's like I was telling my dad recently in Canada. Like if I want to work in, I gotta leave Calgary, right? Because like what am I gonna do? Municipal politics or something?
Well, why not?
Have you seen the people that work in municipal politics?
Well, I have absolutely no idea how politics work. I just know that's so frustrating.
Like city councils
and no one's happy in that.
City councils are usually elderly, well, like senior citizens who are like community workers and are known.
You can use it as a step for sure.
You kind of do that at the end. Once you're done everything, you go back to your home, to your community, to your neighborhood, and you represent them because everyone knows you, right? Because you were brought up in
Prime Minister of Alberta, not Prime Minister,
Premier?
Premier of Alberta.
Yeah, but I have no interest. Like, there's a lot of people who have Alberta as their, like, that's their identity, right? Like, I'm an Albertan, like, farming and natural gas and beef and all that stuff.
Yeah, beef and
like,
trucks, yeah.
It's cool. I support most of those things, right? But that's not at the forefront of my, like, sort of identity, right? I'd be, like, forcing myself. It would kind of like the passion thing. There'd be no passion in that.
So how do you find the
like even if I
median, I guess, the place where you want to end up? because there are those positions that would give you the ultimate ability to like make the most decisions, I guess. That most things are reliant on your decision, but those things would kind of, being in that position would maybe put you in a position where you don't have time for your family, or you are in the forefront of all news, and maybe it's not the most, the happiest place to be. For example, I don't know, being the president, or in Poland's case, the what was it, prime minister?
Prime Minister and the President.
So prime minister, I guess, is the one in Poland who makes most of the decisions. And you say you wouldn't want to do that because, I mean, it would be a very stressful job. So I remember I was brainstorming about this, and you said that at one point you even wanted to be the Canadian ambassador in Warsaw.
I've thought about that. I used to tell myself that I kind of want to be like behind the scenes and, you know, not really in the forefront. But then I realized that you don't have a voice when you're one of those people, especially if you're working in diplomacy. Like, your voice is the voice of the government.
So you're just
what the government says, you have to follow that line, or you get relieved of your duties, right? Because when you're an ambassador or a diplomat, you're not a politician. It's not your role, right? Like,
obviously.
You're just a talking point.
You're
for
just
the government.
there
You're
to represent.
And that's it, right? You say something out of line, like, you're going home. And I think it would be very hard for me to do that. And I think that's why I've become set on moving to Poland, because if I was to go into Canadian politics and live in Ottawa,
you just wouldn't care.
Well, I would almost be lying to the whole country, right? It'd be like a spy, because my interests are Poland, right? Like,
once we post this podcast, you officially can't pursue
I don't think so,
Canadian politics now.
Because
now we all know.
Because would I be Canada first, or would it be like all these, you know, paid off politicians who have the interests of another country in mind? Right? It'd be hard.
I feel like it'd be hard to help Poland while being a Canadian politician.
Well, first off, you couldn't as like a random backbencher MP. Maybe if you're the prime minister, but
I don't even know what the MPs really do, other than the one. Are they the ones who make all the noise? Where, like, when you see those videos on Instagram?
Yeah.
Of like Pierre Poilievre or Trudeau saying something, and everyone in the background is like, ew.
Yeah, those are them. So all of them are technically MPs. Like, Trudeau had to be elected as a member of Parliament, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And in Canada, how it works is you represent your riding first, right? So if you're member of Parliament for like Sherwood Park, right? The interests of Sherwood Park and your constituents are like take the forefront over Canada as a whole, right? So when you're in Parliament, you're the representative of those specific people, right? But like,
do you really have that much to say or to do?
Most of them never take the stand and talk in Parliament. They all just kind of sit in the back and fill the seats and vote.
See, that's the thing about politics. I mean,
there's the couple cases of the ones who don't speak English very well. They can read English, right? But like,
they don't speak English.
Well, no, it's like when the president of Poland came to Edmonton, he told reporters like no questions, right? Like, I can, if you give me the questions earlier, I'll like prepare something and I can answer, right? But if you like off the bat like improvisation, you can't do that in English.
To improvise in English?
It's just his English isn't that good, right? Like, it's understandable because
but I feel like that is
he can get around it.
That is such a minor issue, especially. I feel like
right, but going back to what I was saying, when there's members of Parliament in Canada who can't do that in English, right?
I know, but
or
I guess,
French,
especially presidents, I think that it should be
problematic.
You've gotten to the point where you just speak the language where you can
most of the time
express yourself the best,
and then
you can just translate it. Yeah,
but not when you're a Canadian politician. You can't speak in English.
Yeah, well, that's problematic for sure. So going back to what we were saying,
it makes you think how they get those positions, right?
Especially since like seeing what you have to do to make your name known, I guess, in those spheres.
It's an interesting.
For those who don't know, check out his business card and see all the different politicians that he's already met.
Yeah.
Whether it be in Canadian politics or Polish politics, I think they're very much like on top of your game in that regard.
I've met a lot more influential Polish politicians than Canadians by far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well That's why the plans are tilting in that direction anyway.
Yeah.
So going back to our question, what role do you see yourself playing then? What
I don't know. That's kind of where it
shoes
gets.
do you want to fill?
That's where it gets hazy. Like, I keep going back to this Canada thing, but it would make the most sense for me now to go into Canadian politics because this election's coming and there's going to be a lot of new jobs in Ottawa, right? And I can kind of roll the wave into Ottawa and get myself a job as whatever. I don't want to do that. I definitely want to have a position where I can say what I want to say, and not sort of have someone above me that whips me into line and keeps me in check, which is very, very hard to do in politics. And there's very few people who say what they really want to say. Right? There's a lot of people who are just talking heads for either an elected person or someone behind the scenes who's just donating money, right? So I don't know what role I'd want to have. That's the hazy bit. It's like,
But at least, so I guess going back to what I was saying, when you see your vision and you see your closest self and you can't bridge the gap, I feel like the goal you have is come to Poland and enter politics in some way.
Yeah.
Where it leads you, the job that it leads you to, you might not know exactly, but at least that's what you're gonna do for now.
Yeah,
Find some kind of internship here. So now you only see the bridge.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because I'm quite open as to where it takes me, right in the end.
Well, I think if you have, I guess, your priorities straight, then they will lead you where.
It's an interesting game because politics, you can know nothing about a given sort of topic in industry and sort of represent that thing like a.
Well, so many politicians have
become like a
just come out of nowhere.
Like our current Minister of National Defense is a doctor who was never a soldier or never had anything to do with the army, right? So.
Well, it's an interesting field, politics, because you don't really need.
You don't need anything.
You don't need that. Well, if you look at Trump, for example, how he came from. I think his greatest strength was just his ability to like rile people up, and to express the passion.
Well, he was also very rich.
All that definitely helped, and.
But yeah, I think like as a bare minimum, you have to be able to talk and to convince people.
Yeah. So like, do you really need to have all this history in order to be a good, what was it, Minister of Defense or whatever?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't even know what exactly a Minister of Defense has to do. And I'm not even sure
you
how.
run the army, right? The military.
Yeah, but how much of that
buy
is
things
is that, and how much of that is your, like, party, your closest colleagues who all make this decision together? Like, how much does your individual voice have to do? It's not like you have access to nuclear weapons with a big red button like they do in cartoons, Yeah. It's not like the world is at stake. Like, you're one player in probably a whole set of people, right? Like, I have no idea how it works. That's why I'm curious
what few people actually know
position you'd have to be in to actually have your voice matter.
Well, you probably have to be at the top, right?
Yeah, but what does top mean?
Not even at the top, because if you look at, I don't want to. Let's look at Grzegorz Braun, okay? Grzegorz Braun, who I neither support nor not support. But he says what he wants to say, right? And is he at the top? No.
I think he's very influential.
He's very well. He's the leader of his own political party, right? Maybe that's.
Is that kind of what you want to do though?
I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe.
Just have your own little set of followers and.
Maybe. But what I'm getting at is there's people at the bottom of things who say what they want to say and they'll get punished for it, right? And there's people at the top who say what they want to say and they do get punished for it, right? Like.
Yeah. Well, I guess when you find yourself in a situation where you have a no influence, because let's say that you're not involved in any politics for that matter, and you do have a problem with the world, well, at least
you can't really
what
do
they
much.
say, and I'm not sure exactly who said this, but it'll come to me. Well, the best thing you can do is to take any leadership role you can, right, in any field at all. whether it be in your local church or whatever else, because at least then you can share your ideas with other people and then see where that takes, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of people who say that they want to change the world. They want to make their country a better place going into politics.
Yeah,
It's like,
you know?
it's great. It's good you have that sort of vision, but it's not that easy. It's really not that easy, right?
Yeah.
Going into like power dynamics.
On the other hand, it is kind of a little bit.
Well, going into like power dynamics now, like how much can the Polish government actually do? Looking as an example, right? The president or the prime minister, not that much, because
I've been surprised a lot by how I've seen organizations, I've seen like groups, and I thought that they were just a bunch of nobodies, and actually they did have a lot of influence. For example, our Scouts group in Alberta, who I thought was just on its way out, maybe had not really a lot of influence, just a bunch of people gathering and sharing ideas and moving forward towards a goal of some sort. But the president came and visited us. You know, all of a sudden you realize that maybe I do have a voice here. And even amongst that group, you realize that it's like, okay, we don't have any strict like leadership. There's none of that. There's not a lot of competition. If you wanted to be on top of that, you could be the one who leads it.
yeah,
Right?
well,
And with that, you kind of have the future generation of those like Polish kids like that relies on you almost, that is so influenced by you.
yeah. I think
Like you could
we
change the
have
course
the-
of Polish, like the Polish community in Edmonton. Like you could definitely change
Sure,
the
you
course.
can, right? We are a huge influence on like the kids who take part in Scouts, right? Like,
Okay, but kids, like even for, like zooming out from the individual, you can change the course of like the history of Poles in Edmonton
Of
or
Polonia, yeah.
Calgary, of
Polonia.
Polonia. You could totally change its trajectory even because of how little people are involved in it if you were to commit to it.
Yeah, well, it's like I was saying yesterday. Like, I don't know if it was yesterday, but you can get to the top of those organizations very easily just by being a young person who's engaged and involved and shows up to meetings, right? Like they will value that because they are realizing now that they're all dying out, right? And surprise, there's a lot of money at stake with these organizations, right? Like if you look at Vancouver or Toronto, there's a lot of very very expensive real estate that Polonia owns that was bought years ago in like downtown Toronto, or not even, right? Maybe Mississauga, which has grown suddenly. You're now downtown
It's
Toronto.
absorbed, yeah.
Right? Like there's buildings worth millions of dollars, and you think Polonia is looking for young people to continue the sort of, I don't know, rich culture and history of Polonia in Alberta? Maybe some of them are, right? Most probably aren't. There's a story I heard about.
Wait, you're saying that they're not looking for people to continue the culture, but rather to take over those
What's a business?
businesses,
I think
those
so.
those investments? You think?
Yeah.
But why would they care for those investments if it wasn't for continuing the culture?
Well, here's a story from Toronto I heard. I can't remember what the organization was, or maybe it was in Vancouver. But regardless, details don't matter. There was a building that was owned by a Polish organization, right? And the board of directors or the people who were like in charge of this building were getting old, and they decided to sell it and took the money and fled, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
Well,
and you know,
heard it here
Polonia
first.
lost a lot of well, firstly history and culture and access to these places. Like it's hard to have a Dom Polski and run it, right? There's a reason our Dom Polski in Calgary has more non-Polish events than Polish events, right? Like there's so many Indian weddings and like random like Pakistani conferences. That
Absolutely, I can only imagine our Polish hall in Edmonton
it's the
is-
same thing, right? Yeah.
is quite a chunk of land in what was probably at one point not as desirable of a
Yeah.
location, but now has become downtown Edmonton, walking distance from like the most important street. And we have a huge hall there, a huge parking lot, and you can only imagine how much money they need to run that. So
I just find it hard to see the future of Polonia because it's shrinking every year,
Mhm.
right? And we used to like not have to worry about that because we would rely on huge waves of migrants that would come in from Poland and sort of fill the gaps of these people that would disappear, right? That's not happening anymore. Like the school in Edmonton that got shut down, right? That's sort of
Those are
evidence
huge
of
hit,
evidence
yeah.
of this happening, right? And we're losing Polish at I think quite a rapid pace in comparison to other countries, right? Like I learned about the Polish population in Romania, which is like seventh generation, and they speak perfect Polish, right? But that's also because they live in villages where they're like all Polish, and you know they're not
Yeah, like little
really
Poland.
Romanian. But like we're losing Polish, and like these organizations are starting to have talks of whether they should continue being strictly like Polish language organizations, or you know flip to English completely to try to like get more people to show up to these meetings, right? Because there's a lot of people who are probably like, yeah, well, you know, I don't speak Polish good enough, I understand, so it kind of like holds me back, which is fine. But I think when you lose the language, you're
Well, the language
that's
is such
that's a
a
slippery-
huge part of
it's a
it.
very slippery slope to losing everything. And I think in most places, like that's where it's going. Like
Absolutely. Well,
Winnipeg used to have a very large Polonia, or like Polonia, sort of population. Like that's where all these organizations were started, like Congress and stuff. It was all in Winnipeg, and
it's very interesting.
now
It's very
everyone in
interesting
Winnipeg is old.
because I have no idea how you could possibly reverse this trend.
I don't think you can.
Like even if you were the best scouts group ever, you know, and you tried to bring all these Polish people together, you got to realize the people who are in scouts are usually in like 3 other Polish things. You know, like the Polish church does so much to keep everyone together. Like, if only for the reason that like you see all the Polish people on every Sunday. If we lose that, like Polish dancing groups could fall apart.
Well,
I wonder how many languages, how many like nationalities, how many different
have these problems.
Yeah,
Probably
in
most.
these countries.
The church is interesting for Polonia because the parish has always been like the center of everything, right? The first thing that these people established when they came was a church. It was like, we need a church, right? So these people, like, there's a growing movement now, obviously, I guess, around the world of people who don't want to have anything to do with the church, but especially in like Polish organizations, like, oh, well, why are we, czemu wszystko jest kościelne, right? Like, why is everything at the church? It's like, well, that's just how it's always been, and like,
well,
whether
all
you
these
believe in
places
it-
rent out like even parts of the church.
right, and like,
You know, they fundraise, they talk about their events there.
yeah,
You know?
like if you want to go and spread the message to the Polish organization, like, where's the best place you can go? To the church. Right? That's really
Well, it's also the only thing that's also regular. You know,
it is, yeah.
it's every weekend, and also you don't have to be part of it to show up.
Yeah.
And it's also the first thing that people look at when they come. You know.
Yeah, but
It's
going
harder to-
back to this language, like, can you imagine scouts being purely English?
Well, it just wouldn't be Polish Scouts anymore.
Right. So you lose that, right? Dance is something else because you don't need Polish language at all in dance. You can, like, for songs and stuff, yeah, but I mean, my dance group, no one speaks Polish there at practices. Right?
Yeah.
So that's something different. But I think it's
Interesting.
impossible to reverse this trend or have like hope that it would kind of maybe slow down, primarily because of the loss of language and because of sort of national marriage, right? Like there's very few Polish people who
Well, when
marry
you're
Polish, right?
second or third generation Polish, and you've learned Polish from your grandma, like, and you never speak Polish, you just speak English on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's very hard to maintain it. But I'm also curious if
It's the
this
sort
is
of-
a result of something good that's happening. You know, this is a result of the fact that Poland has gotten to the point where it's
That's
no
true.
longer so undesirable that people will want to leave.
Yep.
You know, so is it like do we want more Polonia, more Polish people outside of Poland, or not? For example,
well, it depends. That depends if you're a
Just
Polish
to say-
Canadian or if you're Polish.
just to see something extremely nice and not controversial here, I wonder if the war in Ukraine was a blessing for Ukrainian communities around the world that aren't in Ukraine. You know, if you have
Because
so
they
much
got saturated by like
by so many Ukrainians all of a sudden,
I think that's temporary though, because a lot of them are going to go back.
a lot of them are going to stay.
A lot of them are already going back.
a lot of them are gonna stay for sure.
It's kind of like a Zastrzyk, but I think I don't know. It's
Well,
definitely-
okay.
the official like sort of viewpoint of the Polish government on this sort of Polonia thing is they want as much of them to come back as possible.
How much of them to come back?
To come back to Poland as possible. They're doing all these, like even this thing I went to now.
So wait, just so I get it right. So the Polish government wants all of the international Polonia to come back to
The
Poland.
young ones. They don't care about the old ones. The seniors, no, because that's just gonna, that's a strain on the economy. You got to take care of these people now.
No, I think they'll come back with all the money that they
They don't
got
want the
in
seniors.
Canada.
No, they don't want the seniors because the government has finally started talking about the problem. Well, I guess 500 Plus and those whole sort of social programs. The reason they established them was because people aren't having enough kids, right? And how did other countries go about solving this? Like Germany and Sweden and France. They looked to countries where birth rates are very high, right? So sub-Saharan Africa and India, right? Pakistan, and they tried to solve the problem that way, right? Because there's that number of like birth rates
2.1 or whatever,
something like that
2.3
for an economy to be able
To grow, to not decline.
to
yeah.
grow and not stagnate and decline, right? And Poland was late kind of to that trend of trying to fix that problem with migrants,
Well,
right?
for those who don't know, right now in Europe, Poland has the lowest birth rate of any country. In Europe.
Yeah, so Poland was late to that because we had a sort of protectionist, government with protectionist policies for a long time, and
What does that mean? Protectionist policies.
I think that you have the interests of your country first versus sort of the whole of Europe and the like betterment of the European Union, right? Like you kind of it's the sort of individual versus
Okay.
the community sort of aspect, right? And Poland now, especially the people, right? The people, because it would be very hard to convince the voters to bring in a lot of migrants, right? Because well, look next door, you see what's happening, right? It's like all over the news, right? So if a political party was to say, yeah, we're going to bring them in, like that's the end of them, right? So this government that's in power now, they used to be very, very pro-immigration, but now they've realized that you can't have that sort of mindset
Open
anymore.
doors. Just
So
to everyone.
they're starting to work on incentives and programs for Polonia living outside. Well, Polonia de facto means people living outside of Poland, right? But
yeah. So
for
Polonia
people- for
means
people that don't
Polish
know.
people who don't live in Poland, right?
Yeah, and most of them weren't born in Poland, but they want to start programs, and they're targeted at the youth, right? Like next year at the beginning of August, the government is doing this sort of festival thing. I don't know. It's very broad, but they want to bring in like 1,500 young people from all over the world, and it's going to be primarily like it's not going to be like
Meet your wife.
yeah.
It's like
But-
everyone come here, meet
But
your wife.
they said that they don't want it to have the sort of like they don't want it to be like discussions and panels and debates and sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with a C. Conferences. They don't want it to be that. They want it to be more like a party and like a festival and like concerts and stuff and like come
So
to
literally
Poland.
meet your wife.
Come to Poland, see how great it is.
To meet
like-
other people and want to stay.
No, they want you to come to Poland and see how great it is and make you want to move to Poland, right? So they're starting this. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is implementing this like massive program which they're gonna put like tons of money into. That's going to attempt to incentivize young Polonia to move back to Poland. They're gonna show them how like you have free schooling, right? You come like study here. You don't have to stay, but we hope you like it enough to stay, right? And that's how they want to solve the problem. Like the guy that was with us, who was representing the Senate, said, like, yeah, come to Poland, have a lot of kids. Meet your wife here, have a lot of kids, or bring your wife over. And I was like, oh, okay, I understand why you're doing this. like especially when he said that. And I asked him, I was like, be straight with me. Like, what's the incentive of Poland putting all this like taxpayer money into these events? And he's like, well, we want you to come and have a lot of kids. I was like, oh, good. I guess, right?
Gotta guess, but it'll be at the cost of every other
Oh yeah, the
Polonia, every other Polish community around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder because I mean, there's a few places where there's the Polish community has become like with time is it has been shaped by the place so much that it's become its own thing. For example,
Like the Brazilians.
I don't know. I was thinking Chicago or even Toronto.
Hmm.
I think Toronto, the Polish community is so large. Polish Scouts are so large that it will definitely suffer over time from the lack of immigration, but has become its own thing
Mhm.
a little bit.
I agree. That's why I think like I can see Polonia sort of dying in Alberta. Vancouver, I mean, it's like on its way. It has been
Yeah.
just because they're doing a lot better job now, but they were very poorly managed and
Yeah,
run.
yeah. Like it's
But like Mississauga, I don't.
well, I don't know. It's very hard to see for a place like Mississauga because I don't know for those.
I guess I
just
should
to
say-
put it into perspective. I mean, we have one Scouts group
Yeah.
which has really gone has transformed even in the time that I've been in
Sure.
it. You know, and
Well, when I-
COVID destroyed us.
When I
But-
joined it, it was the first like in Calgary. It was dead for like 10 years or something. I was the, like the
See,
first
it's
year
the
back.
it's the ups and downs of it.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine all these Polish things that I took advantage of in Alberta. For example, I don't know, the Polish stores, the church, Scouts. I can't imagine that going away. But then I think
can't?
about how all of it existed in Winnipeg, in Vancouver,
Well,
in
the,
Saskatchewan, and all of a sudden there's nothing.
I can visualize it perfectly by looking at who's running it now, and then looking at my friends and people I know in the Polish community, and
And how
trying
we
to
don't
see
wanna-
them in those like leadership roles and imagining them running these things. And I can't. There's very few people I can think of who would, first of all, want to do that. Right?
That is
Because
true, but you don't need a lot of people. If you look at, for example,
But I don't. But
if you look at Edmonton,
I can't think of anyone. You know.
like if you look at Edmonton, you see like a Druhna Ivana. She is the thing that glued Scouts together. The reason it exists still is because of that one person.
and that's
you
exactly
know,
what I
and-
was thinking of when I said like look at the people running it out.
Like if you took a leadership role in these organizations, and you can easily take a leadership role in multiple of these organizations, you know, you could extend its life by 30 years for sure.
Now I gotta find at least like 10 other people like me to do it.
I think that people are drawn to good leadership, and I think you'd find those people.
I think they are, but can you? Okay,
It's another question of
looking-
if it's worth extending for 30 years,
Don't-
or is it better to maybe grow something in Poland instead and put your efforts elsewhere?
You don't have to. Don't name names, but can you see a replacement for Druhna Ivana out of people you know? I can maybe think of one that could do it.
I'm interested in who that one person is, but no, I don't.
I'm thinking like people in Scouts, right? Because
In Scouts right now?
Yeah.
Well,
I think there's one person who could probably do it just because of her. She has a very kind soul, and I think she could kind of fit the Ivana vibe. But maybe I don't know her that well.
but also, I think it's hard to say because Scouts is youth. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of these kids are kids. You know, they're 12, they're 13. They could change a lot by the time
That's
they're
true.
16,
I guess-
17.
I guess-
They could totally turn away from it. They could totally get involved in it. And right
Okay,
now,
okay.
she has an awesome group of kids like growing up. There's everything in these communities in Polonia is cyclical. It comes in waves. Like people form little groups, and those groups like go through all of the stages of it. You know, like when
Those
we had
groups
the
fall
Vendro.
apart.
If those groups fall apart before anyone takes on a leadership role, then you have a drought.
Most of the time they fall apart. They
Look at for example in Vendros we had the group of girls who kind of went through and they kind of took a hit because of COVID and because of going to university. Going to university is a killer for these things, but now they're coming back. They're taking on some roles, and the next group, the girls that we have now going through, are first thing there's a lot more of them, and second thing I think they're more in it for the Scouts aspect
I was about to say because
than just the friends.
I think the Ventro group girls, they do it because they like each other and they're friends, and it's like a fun thing to do. But
and I don't blame them. Like a
I
lot
don't
of these
either.
things.
No, totally. But there has to be at least one person has to have a perspective of doing this, not for their friends or for themselves, but for the betterment of the organization as a whole.
Hmm.
Right? You love it so much that you just you feel like you have to take it into your hands to ensure that it survives. Right? I love it,
Mm-hmm.
but do I love it more than, I don't know, Poland? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's hard to
Right.
say. It's hard to say. It's hard.
Well, I guess I don't, because if I did, then I would stay in Calgary and you know, make sure that it doesn't die. Well, because in Edmonton you guys have a very good group. In Calgary things are not looking so great, right?
Well, they're looking better in other regards, but
When it comes to men, we've always struggled for male leaders, I think, in Scouts. And
do you think male leaders in Edmonton right now are good?
no, but you know, there's a couple stick around. Like I don't know. I know me and you both didn't do the best job of running things.
I think it was hard. It was hard to fill shoes that I didn't even know how they looked.
You never saw
filled,
these.
you know?
Yeah, totally. I agree with you.
Yeah,
So,
and it was an interesting
I think I don't
chapter
know.
in my life,
was,
and I hadn't crossed it off for sure. And I
haven't
want to
either.
involve my kids in Scouts. I think Scouts are
I haven't
awesome.
either, but
and
I
I'm
think
looking for ways back into it.
I was put into a very bad position of being thrust into this role at the age of like 14, and the people that I had to, you know, I guess I was in charge of or lead were a year younger than me, and
Yeah.
it was kind of destined to self-destruct, and it sort of did.
Interesting. I guess maybe it's there's no point in I don't want to say no point in extending its life, but I think that it'll just run its natural course, and if
Yeah,
it's,
yeah. If
I
it's gonna
think it'll,
die,
it'll transform into something
it's
else.
gonna-
You know, I don't think it'll disappear completely,
maybe, yeah.
or at least now for now. I've known it. Like nothing is eternal.
Maybe we don't have to like artificially
Hmm.
sort of keep it alive, but just, you know, let it do its thing
Let it simmer for now.
and see what happens.
Yeah. So what's in store for you? What's next? So we know that you have 2 years, right, or just under 2 years
A little bit less, yeah.
of schooling left, and you're looking at it more so as I need to get it done and over with.
The summer of 2026, I will be moving to Poland for good.
For good.
Yep.
But you were looking into
Well,
different.
yeah. Next summer, I want to work in Poland to kind of get my foot in the door, right? And
So where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like what are some things you'd
I'll
like
be
to
25.
focus on?
I've told myself that in 5 years I want to, if not be married, be with the girl who I'm gonna marry.
Okay.
So that's sort of like a minimum, because I think at 25, well,
You
you're
just-
almost there, but
Well, you just gotta start making some important decisions in your
I think
life.
so.
I think
yeah,
so.
yeah. 25, like, I don't know. My mom's like, oh, it's too young, it's too young. But I always found that I don't want to like toot my own horn, but I was always a little bit more mature than the people my age. Like I always,
In that regard, you always.
well, even if I went over to like family friend's house or like homes for like dinners or like Christmas parties, I spent most of the time talking to the adults than to like the kids sometimes, right? Because I was like, these people are idiots.
Well,
I always tried to sit at the big table. Even looking at like my friends now, like I don't know, a lot of them are older than me, and I really don't have a problem sort of conversing or hanging around people who are older than me. But sometimes it's harder to do that with people who are my age, because I don't know, they're partying and they're sleeping with a lot of girls and like that's at the forefront, and I'm kind of like I'm past that.
you gotta travel the world. Well, you gotta do other stupid things that young people do. You know.
Yeah, so that's why I think at 25, like I think I'm getting close.
Crossing borders on foot and
I'm getting close
making
to
stupid financial decisions.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a lot more fun.
People tend to make stupid financial decisions a little bit later in life, but I think it's good to make them early.
I think it's good to just travel
It's
the world.
very wise. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think traveling
Literally just that.
traveling has opened my eyes in so many aspects. Like I can't even.
It's hard to narrow down
I couldn't
into
imagine
lens.
I couldn't imagine having the same sort of perspective on life or
this chair.
sort of thoughts if I didn't travel.
Yeah, I agree
Like
with you.
I've never experienced poverty, and I think living in Canada, like it's very hard to sort of see that and feel that. But going to some of these places that I've been to, like it's wow. Like I remember when we landed in Egypt, the airport was beautiful, right? Very nice, very wealthy, very expensive, and sort of the whole like surrounding area was very rich, like palm trees and like clean grass, right? In Egypt, grass is not something you see often.
Not common. Usually.
But as soon as you like kind of leave that airport, like you see it, right? And I remember driving in a bus that we took from the Red Sea inland into the Nile, and we were driving for like half an hour along the banks of the Nile, and there was just like so much trash everywhere, and like people, like searching for I don't know, food or for something to sell in the trash. Especially in Cairo, it was even worse because the slums of Cairo are ridiculous. Like it's crazy. There's so many of these sort of like blocky like apartment buildings that they sort of built and never finished, and they kind of moved on to the next, right? So they're just, it's like the foundations are there, right? People are living in these foundations, and there's just
like just a skeleton.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, for me it was definitely eye opening.
It's crazy.
I mean, to say that you don't see poverty in Canada, you definitely see poverty, but it's a line. Like you see homeless people, and then you see people who are like middle class or lower middle class, upper middle class, but they're still relatively, like, some people have nicer cars, but they're all functioning somewhat the same. Whereas you'll go to these places, and I don't know, crossing borders is so surreal to me. When we crossed from El Salvador to Guatemala, I think it was. Just the culture changed. For example, people throwing garbage everywhere.
Oh yeah,
people
we were driving
literally.
in that van,
yeah, like imagine opening up a bottle, downing it, and throwing it out of an open window in the middle of a conversation with someone like it's nothing. No one says anything or thinks weirdly of it. Throwing cans just like to the side, there's garbage everywhere. And before, just a second ago, you were in El Salvador, and there was just like no garbage anywhere.
It was so clean, right? So
pristine. Right?
And it wasn't always like that there, right? So I think El Salvador really showed me that
you can fix this place.
You can fix and regime
very
change,
quickly.
Regime change and a strong leader who was like very no bullshit can actually like make a big difference.
That was
right.
It was quite crazy because
it'd be cool to go there if we would have been there like before and after. There's a lot of people who like went before and after and like experiences, right? But I've seen enough pictures and videos to kind of get the gist of.
Well, after we went there, I had a lot of like Instagram reels.
Yeah.
Of either interviews with Bukele or like before and afters or the prison videos that you showed me. They incarcerated something. What was it? 20,000?
I think it was more.
Or however many.
I think it was 60,000.
Tens of thousands of people who were associated with.
Well, it was the highest homicide rate per capita to the highest incarceration rate per capita in the span of a couple of years.
That's crazy. I'm really curious what it's like for the locals to experience that.
Average people, yeah.
Well,
most of them are in prison. A lot of them got locked up, right?
Well, no. Come on, 60,000 versus how many?
I don't know.
I actually have no idea what the population.
It's a small country.
Well, maybe they just incarcerated all the men.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, I mean, if it works.
Well, recently I saw they're starting to put those people to work.
You showed me that too.
Yeah, like that's pretty.
And it looked good. These people, and it's not like. I don't know, I saw recently, it was blowing up on Instagram, how they make prisoners in China do like a lot of monotonous tasks, like screwing all the Christmas lights in, or like crap like that, things that you think will take hours, and they do take hours. The reason they're done and sold for as cheap is because all these people do all this like crap.
Okay,
but in the videos...
In China, it's usually slaves, not prisoners.
Well, I guess it's a fine line there because a lot of
But I think like looking at the El Salvador example, if you tried to do that in anywhere else in the Western world, like that sort of forced labor thing, everyone would be like, oh, human rights and whatever. I can't do that. It's better just let them rot in jail and be a kind of strain on the country, right? Because you have to pay for all that, right? But El Salvador, it's almost like it just seems so obvious. right? You have a massive population of people who are just sitting there, and you're paying for them to sit there, right? It's like, well, put them to work.
Put them
Right?
to work, but it's not
Pay
even
for
put them
pay
to
for
work.
your pay for
but
your crimes. and
Educate
actually-
them. Did you see the crap that they were doing? They were like
Yeah.
fixing cars.
Yeah.
They were like, I don't know. There was this guy fixing a shoe. You know, and it was just like they were doing skilled
I can't
labor.
remember-
Like
I
you
can't
get
remember-
out of jail, and all of a sudden you have a freaking trade. that you
Because
can go
prisons, I think, should primarily try to re-institutionalize people back in society.
Well, that's the idea, but I don't know how many of these, especially.
Although,
excuse me,
you know,
when you have
it depends on the crime, but usually, you know, there's people that you can't and shouldn't try to re-institutionalize.
that's the thing I'm talking about. Like how would you go about
Well,
doing that?
depends
But I
on-
guess they have ways. You know, I'm not gonna pretend like I know how they divide you into yes we can save you and no we can't save you.
Okay, but like think about it. If you have 10,000 people who are on death row, I guess, right? So they're never gonna get out of prison, but they're not gonna get killed because there's no death penalty, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of it's like dead waste that you have to pay for, right? All this taxpayer money to pay for like food and pay for the prisons and the guards and the people that work there. It's a no brainer to put these people to work, and force them to do it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you'd have to sort of incentivize
Well,
them. You'd have to incentivize.
I don't see
them
why
to,
you wouldn't pay them. Pay them in whatever
I
way
guess
you.
could. Because you have to incentivize them enough for them to
Want
want
to do
to
it.
do that work,
Yeah.
want to do that work, knowing that they're never actually going to get out of prison, right? It's like
Well, just give them a way to spend money while they're in prison, and there is that.
yeah.
You can
that's
buy
true.
whatever cigarettes or whatever. the
I'm
heck
sure they
you
have
buy.
families, and families would appreciate money, and probably a lot of them
Yeah.
are family
Do
men.
they have like kiosks in prison?
I think some do. I don't know.
They have to have a way.
Depends on like have you seen prisons in like the Nordic countries? It's like hotels. You
Yeah.
can leave and like go to the
Maybe I don't know how many of those videos are true, but I've also seen a lot of
Look
like
very
the,
nice. I don't know.
I guess former prisoners who got out and started like YouTube channels or something. Like there's a guy who tattoos, and there's another guy who like just tells about a bunch of stories. But I don't know. He had this like cooking video where he said like, okay, this is the type of ramen we can get at prison. You know, like or in prison we can. This is worth like a pack of cigarettes. If you have this one, it's like super good. So I guess there has to be ways of getting rations outside of just the I don't know, the quote unquote like the scoop of crap they put on your tatsa on your like little tray how they do in movies. You know, there has to be a way of. I have no idea how that works, but
I don't know. Going back to El Salvador, I think that's going to be something our kids are going to learn about in schools, like that sort of country in the episode. It's going to be a lot of textbooks. Depends on who writes the textbooks and whether they like Bukele or not, right? Because the winners usually write the history books.
Well,
But,
we'll see. We'll see how
Bukele isn't liked by everyone.
that pans out. So where are you headed next? Where are we headed next?
Where are we headed next? Well, I have invitations to a lot of places.
We have that invitation to
By people I've met at like Zlot, right? Like it's fascinating.
people you met while traveling. We have
Yeah,
that.
that's true. We have a contact in Israel who is probably going to be
Cut that out.
probably going, well,
No, I'd love to go to Israel.
I would too.
I would love to go to Israel, but for that reason, like
I think,
I'd
yeah,
also love to go to Iran.
that's true. Yeah, I don't know how it is going to Israel now. Our mutual acquaintance was trying to convince us that it's perfectly fine and safe to go there now, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, he was
He's also from Tel Aviv, which Tel Aviv is known as like
the nice
gayest
place,
city in the world.
the gay city in the world.
Yeah, they're very open to everything.
Yeah,
It's
well,
very secular, like
well, I just want to see these places. I
non-Judaic
wanna,
place, you know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I want to experience. I don't know where we're going next. Like, Russia's on the.
I'd love to go to Russia once again, a place where absolutely it's so hard to gauge what's even going on in Russia
And
because
it's
a lot
so-
of people are convinced that the war is there. Well, it's not there. Like
Yeah.
how much of it is
Yeah. First of all,
like am I
country-
actually in danger of going into Russia? You know, or is it like
Depends
they
where
will look at my freaking Instagram history, find something like pro Ukraine, and all of a sudden I'll disappear. Like, is that?
That's true. That's hard. I don't know how to gauge that. But like, I've met a couple Polish people from Russia recently, and I asked them, One of the guys lives in Moscow, right? And I was curious. I was like, so when the sanctions like hit, did you feel the effects of them? And he was like, no, not at all. And like most people haven't, right? Because I don't know if they're not strong enough or if Russia is just that powerful that they're able to like fully protect their people from sort of feeling the effects. Like you watch the news and you know Russians are poor and struggling and there's nothing like in the stores and you know poverty everywhere. But
Not so much.
not,
Yeah.
not really.
Well, you were telling me that that after the war, like all these companies and brands say they're gonna pull out of Russia.
They
And
did
just change the name,
rebrand.
the locations,
Yeah.
all the same. McDonald's still there, you know.
Yeah, they're still making money off of it.
So
Yeah,
like
I think
that.
Russia is just such a fascinating place that like I have to go to at some point.
Me too.
because
I'd love. For me, it's been a
look at-
dream to take the Trans-Siberian train.
Look at like almost any sort of event in history. Russia's always either been like part of it or like
It's interesting because
You know?
Russia's in its like own little sphere, you know.
it is, totally.
Like they have their own Google, YouTube, like everything is. Recently, I accidentally went on like Russian YouTube, and well, a lot of the videos were in Russian, so I didn't stay long. But it's like totally different layout. look totally different,
Yeah.
and yeah, it'd be,
It's like
it'd
it's
be
different-
so
it's a
cool
different
to
world.
go and
Different
see
world.
that. But I mean, there's so many places I'd love to visit,
Yeah, you just gotta cross them off one by one. I think like
regardless. you
I
know?
I could not imagine myself like staying in one country and never seeing anything else. you know?
Yeah.
And also like most of the people like most people the sort of perspective they have in another country is shaped by like the narrative that their news station like feeds them, right? Like my friend, my childhood friend from school, I remember I was at his home and I was telling his mom that like I'm going to Poland. This was actually right after high school when I was thinking of moving to Poland for university, right? And she was like looking at me as if I was talking about some like third world country where
Poland.
like, where people are on the streets and there's communism or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many countries like that. Like talk to the average Canadian and see what they think about Russia or I don't
It's
know,
so weird when
America.
you hear Canadians like talking, and it's clear that they think that Canada is superior in every single way. Like they think it's the safest. They think it's like the
Yeah.
most beautiful. The
Well, it is
like
very
the
beautiful.
craziest
yeah.
one. There are so many great aspects to Canada, obviously.
Yeah.
But there are places, even Poland,
Yeah.
like in the not that even Poland, because Poland is different to Canada in so many ways, but there are so many aspects that are so different in other countries that you wouldn't even expect them to shock you as much as they would. For example, the fact that everyone travels here by train. So few people have. Well, the people who live in cities, you can totally get away with not having a car, you know, and how the culture somehow, like, I feel like it binds you more, you know, as opposed to Canada. Distances are just so much greater in Canada. And, like, if you're in one place, you don't even know how much climate affects the way you live until you leave and realize that there's places like freaking Guatemala or Costa Rica where it's plus 30 every single day and the humidity is like way up there and these people function totally differently.
I think the urban layout of Canadian cities versus Polish cities has a huge impact, right? People in Poland are a lot more connected with themselves, I think, versus in Canada, we really live in those like 15-minute cities, right? In those like suburbs, and the cities are so like wide and stretched out, and there's just suburb upon suburb, and there's really
Absolutely.
nothing. There's nothing there, but there's just home upon home. You don't know your neighbors at all, right? Because you kind of live in that bubble, and sometimes you don't even have to leave that suburb because I don't know, you work down the street, right? You go to your Sobeys, your Superstore, somewhere there. Like how often does the average Canadian go into downtown if they don't work there? Probably not at all, right? How many times do they go for a walk in their neighborhood?
Yeah, well,
You don't
here
walk, you
everything's mixed
You don't,
up.
you don't go on a walk in Calgary unless you have a dog because like what are you gonna see? Like houses, you know?
Yeah, well, just the idea of living in chunks of land that are designated for living. That does not exist in Poland,
No.
or not nearly to that extent. You still have żabki, you still have like stores in between.
Because look,
You
in
still
Poland we build up, right? In
What do you mean?
Canada you build like out.
What do you mean build up?
Well, you have like apartments everywhere. Everyone lives in apartments in cities.
Well, I guess in Canada you just don't have that need. Only in like
Because we have so much,
downtown,
because we have so much land, so we just build.
Okay, but I guess it also depends where. In a place like Mississauga, it probably.
Yeah, yeah. I
changed a lot.
guess I'm looking at like Calgary because Calgary keeps on expanding, and I think that's maybe like I don't know. You ever heard of a housing crisis in Poland?
A housing crisis in Poland. Well, I'm not very much into politics. You're my dealer for those.
Well,
Problems,
Canada has
so-
a housing crisis now because I don't know. At one point they just stopped building homes and they opened up their borders and let everyone in, right? But they think that the solution to the housing crisis is to build more homes, which take a lot of time, take up a lot of land, right? In Poland, it's just okay. We're gonna put a block up and suddenly there's 50 families living there, and it's like takes half the time, right? So I don't know. Say what you want about the Soviets, but when it came to city planning, like they did a darn good job.
You know, just build a bunch of concrete squares.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of people hate that.
But a lot of people loved it at the time because I don't know. Look, how many
Do you ever
friends-
see the Instagram reels where it's like you go to visit your grandma in Russia, and it's a lot of the Slavic countries are very similar.
Yeah.
But you see like the osiedle, you know,
Yeah.
and like the
Think about like growing up in like in an shed like that where you had like 4 or 8 like blocks, right? And how many friends you must have had? Like all those.
everyone
kids there.
played. Well, my parents always told me
Right.
these great stories about them
Exactly.
playing on like the
I have
what's that railing for
jetpack.
Trepak, exactly. A lot of
Do you
these
know
places.
what a jetpack is? Like
Well,
no.
you don't have that. You build these like huge apartments, right? They're all in this square, and inside you'd have this. I guess this just a bar.
It almost
It's
looks
like a
like
pull-up bar.
It almost looks like those soccer nets, right? Like the ones.
A little bit, yeah, and everyone just like takes turn taking their rugs and like their covers, everything,
Yeah.
throwing it on it, and then they have these like shapaki. I remember we had one. It was just like this wire that was bent up, and then just beat the shit out of it. Yeah, and like every day you just have a grandma beat the crap out of her rug down there, and then kids would play on it. And kids would like they just pull up, and I guess I remember always there was like you were the cool kid if you were able to get on top of it.
Yeah.
I guess it was the same with soccer nets.
Look, all these stories that like our parents tell us about what they did in their like childhood years. I have lived in the same home for 20 years. I've never had a friend in my neighborhood. I never like we had a local.
I don't even
friend.
know our neighbors. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't either. But you've moved around a lot, right? So that's sort of a different thing.
Yeah.
I've been in the same place. There's a local playground, like I don't know, 5-minute walk away. I've
No
never. It
one
was
goes
never like
there?
a. It was never like a. There's no one there. There's never like a meeting place of kids that would come, right?
Yeah.
Or I would never like tell them okay, I'm going to like Frank's house or whatever, and like run a couple houses down and like show up unexpectedly and like.
It's
play
so
with them,
weird because
right?
from what I heard, it was kind of like you come home, you eat your food, you do your homework so that you can go play outside, and that's where you meet everyone. You know.
When I came home from school, that's it.
You
I'm home.
stay at home.
I'm home.
It's interesting. It's interesting because you make your home bigger and more catered
even,
towards
like-
you, so that you can
Yeah.
have more fun staying in that one place. Whereas if you have a tiny apartment, you just ache to get out of it.
That's true. Well, yeah, and like even before now, like video games and movies and phones have changed the game a little bit. But like when I was growing up, like I didn't really have I didn't have a phone until I was in grade 10, right?
Yeah,
So
pretty similar.
so I didn't have that thing keeping me in the house, but I still stayed at home. You know, like yeah, I went on like play dates and stuff, but
It's
once a
interesting.
week maybe, once every 2 weeks.
Yeah, very different way of growing up. I don't
It's
know.
like I think people understand what it means to like live your life here.
Hmm.
Versus in Canada, it's like I don't know. You go to work, go to school. You work like you're like a cog in the machine there.
It's interesting because, for example, my brother,
Yeah.
my oldest brother, thinks very much differently. He thinks that Canada, the States, it offers you this freedom that you don't get in Poland. You know, you can really build your own world there.
That's
You know,
sort of
you can, for those who are determined in Canada, you can really like make your life catered towards yourself. You know,
I don't know if I need that kind of freedom. Even
like
if I
live
want-
close to
Do you desire that
huge
kind of freedom?
hub, and then just fly everywhere. You
I
know,
don't know if I desire that kind of freedom.
It's hard to say. It's very hard to say because
I
I,
want to
desire
have-
a family.
I
It's
want
hard
to
to say what that will entail, like the complexity of how that will.
I don't know. Like I want a pani krisha living under me that like knocks against the
With a broom?
Yeah, yeah. If I'm like walking.
You know,
to the
have
house
that
or
same
some shit.
the same busted sink as they do in the movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the interpersonal relationships. I feel like having everything won't solve it. In fact, not having everything makes you appreciate
I think
the
so.
little
Yeah.
things.
I think we
you
have
know?
too much in Canada.
I think you have to play on the
Chepak.
chepak, you know? Your kids have to play on the chepak.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. If you Googled a Soviet era playground, they all have those like steel
Yeah.
slides. And there's, what are they? My goodness, have you ever seen those swings that don't have chains? They have like the
Oh
solid
yeah, yeah,
metal
yeah,
bars.
yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's something about that just like lights something up in my heart.
Yeah, I was recently talking to a friend who's a couple of years older than me. He just had a kid, right? And he's getting ready to move to Poland like in the next 2-3 years, right? And he's like, yeah, my like primary motivation is that I don't want my son to grow up in Canada, right? And sort of his reasoning for it was, well, the education system and the stuff they like feed our kids and that it's like I very much agree with that, but I want my kids to grow up in Poland because I want them to play on the Champions League.
I want them to grow up in Poland.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is it the same way that as I like imagine it, as I daydream about it? Is it the same?
Well, I think
still?
it's going to be a lot better than what Canada has to offer when it comes to sort of understanding what like is to live. Like I don't know, it's very hard for me to define like what it means to live life. But when I like see videos of like Italians drinking their espressos in the streets at like
It is a culture that binds everyone, and in Canada, like the culture is a little bit of like
yeah
the lack of culture and the freedom associated with the lack of culture.
yeah I think
That's what I meant by you can literally make your life catered towards yourself.
and I think
You
this,
can build your own little country.
this
almost.
like abundance of freedom has sort of perverted like culture and like what it means to have some sort of identity because
Well, you need a strong will. When you don't have anything like
well,
holding
because
up-
when you have so much freedom, your identity is yours, right? To
yeah, but
create.
for those who do have the discipline,
Yeah.
for those who do have the
Well, it depends
the
what you-
vision of what they want,
depends on what you want from life. I don't know.
yeah, I mean you can.
I want different things. I think, right? Like
Yeah, and I guess
I don't need to have much, but
it's honest work.
as long
A
as
few
there's-
things that I
as long as
want,
there's
I have a clear vision of what they are.
as long as there's a Chepak somewhere, then
Exactly,
I'm
as long
happy.
as
I'm
my
happy.
kids can climb a tree.
Yeah, or
Yeah. And that's why you got to take on the political role in order to
my grandpa would get yelled at.
ensure that
My grandpa would get
Stay.
yelled at for being outside too much and playing with his friends. Like
Yeah.
I've never had that. No one's yelled at me for. I've
What a great problem
yelled
to
at,
have.
right? Like you get yelled at for the opposite. It's like go outside.
Video games are
Think about
ruined.
it, there used to be a time where you would get like your parents would tell you to like stop reading those books, right? Like get off those books.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It's like ile się będziesz tą książkę gapił, right?
Yeah,
now it's like read the book, right? Read more books.
Yeah, so now I guess it's the problem of applying all the technology that is coming our way extremely fast into somehow helping our vision, which I think it's going to be very hard. But
It's weird because
somehow
it seems like we have a nostalgia for something we've never
attain.
experienced or like known, right?
That is such a weird thing to
Right.
have because you don't even know where to
we know
point
it.
your
We know it
compass.
from stories and from pictures and from videos and you know,
Mhm.
but we've never grasped it. It's sort of like running scouts. It's like fill the shoes that you've never seen, felt, or smelled.
Yeah, well, maybe that's how more or less how a lot of things in life are. We have to take on
You kind of know how it kind of know
responsibilities
how it
that
should
you have
be.
no idea how to take on. That's interesting, but
Well, it's sort of. I remember I was talking about what it means to be like ready to have a kid. Like when a woman's like, "Oh, I'm not ready." Are you ever gonna be like ready? Like really? To
or a man for that
a man
matter.
too.
Like,
Yeah, for sure, for
if
sure.
you're a dad, it's like I'm not ready to be a dad.
What does that? What does
How
that
do you
mean?
be ready to be a dad?
Yeah, like to know what it means to be a dad, you have to be a dad, right?
Yeah, I guess, but you can say that you feel like that is a thing that you want to take on right now, or you don't.
you're
But
still not gonna be
what
able
is
to-
it even that you're trying to? What do you think that is you're ready for? Like you don't know what it's
You
like to
probably
have a
have a
kid
very
until you have
different
a kid.
understanding or
Yeah.
perspective of what it's going to be like. I don't know.
Maybe I think that it's very hard to see. I don't know. For me, I get overwhelmed quite easily when I look at all the different technological changes, and when I realize that no matter how much I try, I won't stay on top of it. Like when where everyone has this great power, it's no longer the case that you have to go to the library and the person who is able to sit through 4 hours of reading a book is the one who makes it. At this point, it's become like the person who's able to find the best, I don't know, personal AI assistant who's able to somehow use artificial intelligence. Basically, it has gotten to the point to like, who is the best at finding the tools to do the job for you.
I can't remember where we were,
You know?
but we were traveling somewhere. And
You
this
go
was-
with like making money. It's no longer who can work the hardest. It's who can get the most like creative at finding something else to make the money for him, whether it be like crypto or, and I guess that is work. The pursuit is the work. But things are becoming even more abstract. They're becoming even more connected. Like there's no. I feel like the borders of things that I have in my mind are just like blending. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you remember where this was, but we were either traveling somewhere, or we were in Novus, somewhere where we were just about to fall asleep in the same bed, I think. But
Okay,
right before
just to explain, we
we're broke, so when we travel and we rent places, we usually get a place with one bed.
yeah, exactly,
Because we're brothers. We're not.
Well, I'm not
It's
gonna
not
trim
weird.
this. I'm not gonna trim this. It's gonna release.
No trimming. You're not allowed to trim anything. But anyways, you were telling me about like either a podcast you listened to, or a video you watched about that like Neuralink implant.
Oh, the Neuralink implant.
I was shook.
Goodness,
I was shook at the end of that.
I went into like a little bit of a
Yeah.
rabbit hole when it comes to that and the possibility of that. Really, I mean, even if you just listen to the podcast of Elon Musk and
And
Rogan,
Yeah.
when he talks about it and the possibilities of it and how language might not be needed and how everything that you want to express will be expressed. Oh my goodness! Like to me, that is so
Well, I think
abstract. And the problems that could arise from that,
What
I
you-
can see so many problems arising from that.
what you said that really like spooked me was if everybody around you gets it and you don't, you're like inferior.
Well,
you know,
there's
like-
no way. It's like a phone.
Yeah.
Imagine someone our age who like decides like, no, I'm not having a smartphone. Like you think it's like, okay, this guy is
Yes,
is
but you
edgy, but think about like I do all my banking on my phone, all my emails on my phone, every single ticket I buy is on my phone. And imagine that times 100 because it's in your head.
Times 100, yes, that's
Times
what I was gonna say.
thousand.
Like, you can get by not having a phone. It just makes your life a lot harder, right? And if that's what you're into, then
Well,
That's
everyone
sure.
will have a competitive edge on you.
yeah, exactly.
If everyone has a computer that's like
Well, try having a conversation.
immediate.
If you try to have a conversation
your
with
head.
someone who has a computer in their head, you're not having a conversation with them. You're having a conversation with that computer. If you have that Neuralink in your brain, is it possible for you to have like an individual thought? I don't know.
Well, it's I don't know.
It's
Because the
such
thing
a-
is,
it's such a
going back to the first thing
concept that I
we were
can't
talking about,
grasp.
how broad psychology is. What is an original thought? Do we even have original? Like, where do they come from?
yeah, I guess.
Like, are they all influenced by something that we've, like creativity? How much of that is
There's hours and
ours, and how much of that is just our, I guess, things that have influenced us, and I'm not like expressing it
Well,
right
you
now
can-
the way I want to.
you
but
can go into the extremes and sort of take a postmodernist constructivist approach to this. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's the sort of theory that like gender and sex is shaped by like your experiences
Mhm.
and your like the culture you're brought up in and the religion that your like parents feel. That's sort of I think Freud was sort of the like pioneer in that thought that you don't have like free will or any sort of freedom to create or to like be your own person. It's just everything you are and everything you will be and everything you think is influenced by something else, by your
I don't know,
surroundings,
but
right?
I
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because I think it's a very extreme and like sure there's aspects of it that are true. Like obviously like my upbringing has shaped who I am, right? And the upbringing of some kid in Pakistan has shaped the upbringing of them, right? There's a reason we're different.
Yeah, we're kind of like digressing from the
AI thing.
the Neuralink thing,
Yeah.
but I mean that is such a broad topic. I don't know, maybe the fact that it's such a broad topic, that the fact that so many lines are blurred, the fact that it's so abstract and so undefined and so ungoverned as well. Like who?
Well, someone's gonna steer it until it starts
Well,
steering it. Until it starts steering itself. Right?
Until it gets to the point where it's so large that it's unsteerable and it just caters. It's like,
If I had to guess who would steer it, I would point to a certain country somewhere.
yeah, well, regardless, if it's,
Let's play a game. Try to guess the country.
if you start to build worlds, if you start to like build worlds inside your own world, just like online, you know, for example, a lot of people are talking about the release of Grand Theft Auto 6 because it's such an anticipated game. Grand Theft Auto 5 was one of the best selling games in the world, and now Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming in, and so many of these like futuristic abstract concepts are going to be inside of it, like for example digital currencies within the game that actually have value outside of the game, you know, and you can actually trade within the game, you can have jobs within the game, you know, and
Yeah.
profiles. What's that? There's the Ready Player One.
I was
Have you
gonna
ever
say
seen
yeah.
that?
It's like
Holy crap! Like
it's
once
so
we
cool.
live in that kind of world, and then there's multiple levels to this world because there's different games that you can play. It'll get to the point where it's just so overwhelming for our brains. My brain is already overwhelmed by this
maybe
just
that's what
thinking about
maybe
it.
that's what they're trying to create. This sort of
I
like
feel like
this sort
it'll
of
be
alternate
it's so
reality that you
exhausting
can
to
alternate
even
reality
think
that you
about
can
that.
escape into, right?
yeah.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? I remember that guy on Rogan who was talking about either DMT or ayahuasca or something, where he was on like a trip for like 5 minutes or something very
And
quick.
it felt like 2 months.
No, longer. Like he had a full like
Family and
Life,
kids.
yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah.
he said, it like felt like
And-
years. I forgot what
and
it was, but
the-
it's very
the-
popular.
The danger
one, yeah.
with those drugs is if you keep abusing them, and I don't know if you can fall back into that same reality. Like this guy, if he was to do it again, would he be able to? Go
That's the
back into
thing.
that
If you
and
try
have
to
the
fall
same-
asleep and dream about the same thing, it never works.
Right,
Right?
but this is different. This thing's different because DMT, like, there's that whole test they did where they see the same beings, right? You essentially have the same trip as everybody else does on this.
I don't know if those two things mean the same thing.
But okay, but
If you
but
see
imagine,
the same beings and have the same trip, is not exactly the same thing.
Okay, but
Because how those beings present themselves to you. is-
imagine a reality where you would be able to take this drug and escape into that alternate reality where you have a different family and you have, you know, your own kids, or not even, maybe you just have like a different life, right? And if you have that readily available where you can dip into that whenever you want, then you're gonna start the line
How
between
will you
what's
ever?
real and what's not is gonna be blurred for you, and it might switch.
Why would you
right?
ever address problems if you can just enter another life where you don't have problems? Like the second that one
But that, like, but
one
what I mean is,
life gets rocky, you can just I'll restart.
But I mean,
Control
but-
R. Reload.
At the early stage, you're still going to be conscious of sort of what is real and what's not. Like, you know, what is the drug and what isn't. But I think after abusing it enough, you might sort of not really
Blur it.
completely. Right?
Yeah. Well,
Isn't that
even
what
in-
psychosis is?
Even in,
I think that's
I'm not gonna pretend like I know what psychosis is. Like
Psychosis is
the
what
complexities of it.
it's the
But-
danger of like when people do like shrooms a little bit too much and they start.
Well, not a little too much, because you can get psychosis from one trip on like weed.
You can get from weed, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think you can get it from one, but
But
I know plenty
Even
of
in
people,
Ready
I know
Player
plenty
One.
of people who should have psychosis right now.
even in Ready Player One, they make friendships that are like, I guess, within the game.
Yeah.
And when they connect into the game, they like play as the player. You know, and then when you play as the player, when it gets so good that you feel like you're the player, not that you're controlling the player, but you are the player, and you have other friends, it's already another reality you have. You have friendships inside there. If you meet in real life, it's different. I guess people like play online in Call of Duty.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets to the point where you can enter that world and it feels like you're in it, you'll start to question like which one of these worlds do I value more? Which one is closer to...
It's scary.
Like, why would I ever get out of this reality if I can just stay in here? You know?
If this happens,
there's so many great Black Mirror episodes people have to watch. It's freaking...
If this happens, we just have to move to Chisu and sort of...
Exactly. You have to find a hut somewhere and just raise chickens with our families.
Do you think you could... This is like completely abstracting from the topic, but do you think now it would be possible to move somewhere in the world and like raise a family and have a lifestyle as like homesteading and never be found by anyone?
Probably like Northwest Territories.
Do you think you could never be found?
I think that there are stretches of land there that...
I think there's people living there that we don't
I think
know.
there are stretches of land there that have never seen people.
Would you think there's stretches of land where there's people who have never been seen?
Never been seen at all? Like tribes, you mean? Or...
No, not even. I'm sure someone's thought of this like idea of evading taxes and...
I don't know, but there's
Running away
I mean, a
somewhere.
lot of places where very few people visit, enough where you can, where I'd say that I'd be safe, you know? Like even, well, depends how big of a footprint you're trying to make. If you're trying to like
Well,
start a
ideally,
settlement
No.
and get 6 of your closest friends and their families to come and have a little village, then
You could do that.
I think you could. But if you're trying to,
Oh, we'll like build a cult somewhere then.
I don't know. I feel like once the satellites
People
see
have
you,
tried.
people will be like, people will be curious. If you're just trying to go out alone, I feel like you could, or even like with your closest people, and you're willing to live a very like bare bones life, just to isolate. If your goal is isolation, you're willing to do the things that you have to do that. I think you'd be able to do it. But if you're trying to like start another life elsewhere,
We'll
I think you'd be seen eventually. Yeah. Just scary world out there. A lot of topics you can talk about. I guess thank you for coming on my first ever MacBob podcast.
My pleasure.
You can hear my grandma doing the dishes in the background. We have taken up her living room.
I
We're
don't know,
very
how long have we
gracious.
been? How long have we been talking for? This is.
I have no idea. We're gonna have to see once I get closer to the camera.
Oh.
97 minutes, I think it's like.
97?
97 minutes.
That's good length. Probably cut it now.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mateusz, for being on my podcast.
Just remember, when this podcast blows up to millions of views, I was the first.
You were the first, exactly. So, thank you so much for showing up. And there's a lot of cool things coming to the channel, but I will address them
I'm
elsewhere.
glad we didn't talk about anything that could get me in trouble.
I'm very glad as
Thank
well.
you for that.
Very glad as well. Thank you.